Can you hear me? I hope you can. Very good. Right, okay, let's just turn that music down a little bit and let's just get on with the opening screen and we'll get tonight's little show on the road. Good evening, Scotland. Good evening, social media land. I hope you are well. It is Tuesday, the 20th of December, 2022. This is annoying me already. We are recording tonight's live for the security and integrity of the message and the ability to upload and share via other platforms. If it is taken down for any reason, I will continue to record it, but I'll move the live straight over to the boxes on TikTok, where I will cry like a baby into my great big mug of hot chocolate that I've lost my YouTube channel. Okay, so I start each live, for everybody that's new here, with a brief reminder of the impact of the Supreme Court's verdict and the effect that it's had on the paradigm that we live in a union of equals. Last night I managed to cut it down to about 4 paragraphs, which is great, so it's only like 2 minutes instead of 5 of me rambling, but let's do this again. The Supreme Court's ruling stating that Scotland cannot legislate for a referendum regarding constitutional change because the Constitution is reserved to Westminster makes it 100% clear that this is not a union of equals. How? Simply put, the elected officials of the Anglo-British nationalist, i.e. every unionist party on these islands based in Westminster, can revisit their relationship with the union without even discussing it with any of the devolved nations. So the context surrounding every live I do is based on this paradigm where we are fighting to have the basic right of self-determination, because right now we clearly don't have that right. That's a fair thing to say, really, isn't it? The Saltire has a growing Discord community. It is the perfect place to rub shoulders with other indie folk like yourself. If you want to be part of this community, send Mo a DM on his Twitter account at the Saltire IG. Indeedy-doo. We have a nice little... Oh my god. Put the sound down on my mic. I can hear myself in the headphones. Let's put the chat window up. We do have a Discord. It is good fun. We always go there for a wee hangout afterwards. And all we ask is that you are a pro-indie person, that you set yourself up with a Discord account, and you send me a message either on Instagram or the Saltire Twitter, and we'll check you out. And as long as you have a pro-indie account, we'll let you in. You can come and hang out with us. We've got a nice wee archive of growing documents, interesting videos, and very cool people as well. Very lucky to have cool people. Right, quiet chat tonight, it seems. First of all, I've got a pop filter on my mic, and I just can't get this right at all. Do I sound okay? Let's just do a wee sound check. All right, so I put the pop filter on because I was recording some voiceovers earlier on, and I didn't want to get that sort of sound that you get if you don't have a pop filter, you know, so it stops that air going on to the mic. But yeah, while you're making sure that you can hear me nice and clearly just now, let us see who we have in the chat. We have Luke. Luke, thank you for coming across from TikTok, my friend. I do appreciate that. And thank you for subscribing as well. It's really cool of you. Yeah, Kareem's here, Druss is here. Good evening, Druss, Blackfur, and Morgan. I know it's not Morgan, but hey, you know, it's better than saying good evening, Morgan. Okay, and I sound beautiful. Thank you very much. I'm glad that I sound beautiful. Okay. Quiet chat tonight. You know, that's pretty cool. It means I won't get distracted. I quite like the fact I can put that over there just now. If Barry was on, he might be distracting me with some dad jokes and things. But we're not going to do that. So I've put the chat bar over there because, well, you can see it on the screen still, and you'll still see it on what you're doing, but I've put it out of the way so I don't get distracted with it. And we will come back to you guys to see what you're saying, as we always do throughout our show. So, let us begin. Tonight is kind of, he's here. Oh my God, I've got a chat over there as well. I forgot. That's on OBS. Pardon? Yes, I'm glad you're here, Barry. Always glad you're here. Right. Tonight we're going to be talking about three little issues. Well, not so much issues, three separate things that need to be busted wide open about the EU and how people like to turn around and say, hey, you're not getting back into the EU. So let's just start, okay, and we'll go through all these things, okay? So union folk like to throw unsubstantiated accusations and criticism and whatever they consider to be fact at the independence movement, okay? We constantly hear the same old comments and questions going round and round in circles, and so many of my friends across the social media sphere that are pro-Indy are constantly going back and having to, like, talk about these things over and over again. Things like pensions, the deficit, NATO, defence, borders, currency, trade, passports, and the one that always comes up, the EU. Okay? Is Scotland going to get entry into the EU after we become independent? You know? So, the EU issue is threefold, and we're going to talk about three particular issues with the EU. And the first one is the most famous one of all from 2014 and spanning the years right up until now. And that is that Spain would veto a newly independent Scotland and any application it makes to become an EU member. Crap, I need the chat bar over here. I'm going to give you some links, I am. This, of course, is utter nonsense and has been fact-checked by Full Fact and outlined in many publications as well. So I'm going to give you a few little links here just now, just to verify what I'm talking about just now. So this is the Full Fact link, which talks about it. Here is a link from the pro-independence newspaper, The National. You can call it a rag if you want, I don't really care. It's the only pro-Indy newspaper that we've got, and it's actually owned by a unionist, I believe. It's the same people that own the Herald, so it's interesting. And here's another link to Reuters about the Spanish thing. To be perfectly honest, the Spanish thing is best actually explained. Where the heck is my video buttons? There they are. It's best explained in a wee video. It's about 2-3 minutes long, and it's from back in 2019, and it's righteously good. So I'm going to play that now for you, and then we'll be right back to discuss it. Hold on.
The most enduring anti-independence myths, and it started all the way back in 2012. The claim is that there is no way an independent Scotland would be able to join the European Union, because Spain would use its veto rights to block the move. The logic for this is that Spain would want to oppose anything that could encourage pro-Indy activists in Catalonia and the Basque Country. And it's a reasonable thing to be concerned about, or at least it would be if the Spanish government hadn't repeatedly said that they would do no such thing. So where did it come from? Well, the claim was originally attributed to anonymous Whitehall sources. In February of 2012, the Spanish Foreign Minister completely denied that they would block Scotland's access to the EU as long as Scotland left the UK in a manner that was agreed upon by all parties involved. He went as far as saying that the constitutional arrangements of the United Kingdom are one thing, those of Spain another, and it is their own business if they decide to separate from one another. Better Together, however, decided to ignore that. So in 2014 he went on record again to say that Scotland's admission to the EU could be considered as long as the move is in accordance with legal and institutional procedures. Better Together ignored that too, and the myth persisted. Which brings us to earlier this year. In a letter from Spain's most senior diplomat sent to the Scottish Government, it was stressed that vetoing Scotland not only was not Spanish policy, but it never had been. The diplomat wrote, "The Spanish Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Joseph Borrell, has recently declared that Spain will not block Scotland's entry into the European Union if independence is legally achieved, and such has always been the intention of the Spanish government." That's pretty definitive, and means that the myth of the Spanish veto is thoroughly debunked. The Spanish government has no plans to veto Scottish accession to the European Union, and it has been repeating that over and over since 2012. Better Together ignored several interventions from Spain, all so they could keep the myth alive.
Sorry about the delay at the start there. I was recording something earlier on and I had all the other channels switched off, and crazy. Crazy. But yes, thank you for saying I'm a pro there, Morgan. I try my best. Anyway, it's kind of funny to think that Better Together, the Union, the Anglo-British nationalists like to turn around and shout very loudly from the highest mountain, "You'll never get into the EU because Spain are going to veto you." It's nonsense. It always has been nonsense, it always will be nonsense. And more so now, it's nonsense as well. So don't let anybody ever turn around and say to you, you're not getting in because of that. If they do say that, I will grab that video and I will stick it in the chatty thing later. I don't have it on here just now, I didn't keep the link, but you can keep that. We'll get it on some way. We'll stick it on Discord as well for people to share. But it's kind of important that, we're the grown-ups in the room when it comes to that. We're not shouting nonsense the way that a lot of people are with regards to being members of the union. Why do they do that? Why do they perpetuate nonsense? It's like a crappy game of one-upmanship. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, we will move directly on to the next bit after this.
My name's Robert, and I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
I always play Robert's jingle around earlier in the show, and I always pop his little YouTube link up in the chat as well. Kind of important for everybody, again, that is new to the stream, people that don't know who Robert is. Robert was a no voter back in 2014, right? And he kind of changed his mind completely over the years. And I interviewed him. He's a good friend of mine. I interviewed him, and I always spam this video because these are kind of the tools that you guys can use to get the message across to other undecided people, soft no voters, simply because it's kind of an emotional thing. It's a truly emotional thing, moving from no to yes. You're going against what you voted last time. Some people find it very easy because they're angry, still emotional. But at the end of the day, use that video, send them to that video, use that link, go watch it yourself, understand the mindset of a no voter transitioning into yes. Kind of important. Let's bring up the old chat window just now. I have been called a streetwalker by Barry, thank you. He does know me very well. We love you, by the way, Barry. And Blackfurs had too many Jack and Cokes tonight. Very good. And yeah, I can't decide whether Morgan was being sarcastic or not about my little sound delay thing. But there you go. Thank you, brother. Anyway, the second interesting usual suspect in the unionist arsenal of you will never get back into the EU is that lovely old chestnut of you're going to have to take the euro. You'll be forced to take the euro. You have no choice but to take the euro. Bollocks. Now, I've done a whole live stream about this very topic before and discovered during my research that any new nation must commit to eventually joining the euro, but they're not going to be forced to take it. In fact, there's many hoops necessary to jump through in order to meet the criteria to join the euro. I'm going to read from an article just now that explains this very topic. I will put the article across into El Chatio as well. Ding, ding, ding. Boom. Excuse me. Right, okay. An independent Scotland will be denied entry into the EU unless Nicola Sturgeon commits to joining the euro. Okay, so that was the claim on this particular fact-checking thing done by the National. And the doorstep answer is the governing Maastricht Treaty imposes no timetable or mechanism for a new EU entrant into joining the single currency. EU leaders agree Scotland would be welcomed enthusiastically back into the European fold. On October 27th, 2022, The Times published a story quoting anonymous sources. Believable. Anonymous sources claiming that unless Scotland committed to joining the euro currency area, it would be denied re-entry to the EU. The claim was then repeated at First Minister's questions by Scottish Tory leader Dougie Ross. How significant are these assertions? Well, while the report may be accurate, it is impossible to verify the status or qualifications of unnamed, anonymous sources. It is also obvious that some sources within the EU bureaucracy would be unwilling to give a journalist anything other than a very formal, unnuanced reply to such an inquiry. However, common sense suggests that a Scotland's re-entry to the European Union would be welcomed by that organisation and that details would be subject to that big old word called negotiation. This point was made forcibly by Donald Tusk, former European Council President of the European Council. European Council President of the European Council, that's a title. As far back as 2020, Tusk argued that the Scottish membership would be enthusiastically welcomed by other EU member states. So who uses the euro just now? Well, apart from Denmark, which has a permanent opt-out, all current EU member states are expected to join the euro, although this depends meeting certain economic criteria. But there is no set timetable in which they have to do so. Countries can therefore join the EU before joining the euro. 7 EU members retain their own currencies. Bulgaria, Croatia, Chechnya. Is it Chechnya? Is that C-Z-E-C-H-I-A? Is that Chechnya? Somebody tell me if I'm saying that right. I will just copy and paste that. Here we go. Is that Chechnya? I've never seen Chechnya spelled before. I'm just assuming that's correct. Hungary? Well, no, I've eaten tonight, thank you. Just before Barry says it. Poland, Romania and Sweden. These guys all still use their own currency. In order to join the euro, EU member states are required to fulfil so-called convergence criteria. These binding economic and legal conditions were agreed in the Maastricht Treaty in 1992. The treaty does not specify a particular timetable for joining the euro, but leaves it to member states to develop its own strategies for meeting the conditions for adoptions. It is therefore possible to delay entry indefinitely. Interesting. I think that's what what's it called? Sweden does. You know, they kind of like constantly, oops, we've not ticked that box. Sorry, you know. Right, so the European Commission and the European Central Bank jointly decide whether the conditions are met for the euro area and candidate countries to adopt the euro. So after assessing the progress made against the convergence criteria, the two bodies publish their conclusions in respective reports. These are further ratified by the ECOFIN, which is the Council in Consultation with European Parliament and Member States. ECOFIN, what does that stand for? I'm going to have to Google that. ECOFIN. Sounds like a biodegradable fin on a dolphin or something. Well, it would be biodegradable if it was on a dolphin anyway, I don't know. Could Scotland stay out of the euro? Well, very clearly the Maastricht Treaty lays down no timetable for a member state to join the single currency, but joining does require a commitment to eventual membership. It is therefore wrong to state that the membership automatically ensures eventual joining the Eurozone, or that Scotland would be refused entry unless it joined in short order. So we're not going to be forced to take it. We're not going to be pushed into it, and it's just not going to happen that way. And to be perfectly honest, President Juncker had a great quote from, I think it was last year, says, "I don't intend to force countries to join the euro if they're not willing or they are not able to do so." Yeah. The Saltire is also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube and TikTok. You will find the links to follow us on all of them at www.thesaltire.scot/media. Oakley dokley, let's bring the chat bar back up. See what everybody's saying. Dross. Are you okay, brother? You're just tired of being ignored? I'm sending you love, brother. Lots of love. Okay, Barry, I'm the same as you. I don't have a problem with the euro. I'd rather have a Scottish pound, but if, eventually we take the euro, I'm quite cool with it. England refuses Scottish money, so you'd happily take the euro. And am I saying Chechnya correctly? I hope I am. Truly I am. Okay. That was all my social media, by the way. So if you want to go and follow me on those things and stay up to date with what we're doing here on the Saltire, or just, send me a message, see what I'm writing on the various different things, just do so. It's not bad things. I tend to be quite probably pro-indie in a positive way. I try not to be toxic in any way. Good evening, Tartan Man. How are you? Hope you're good. Okay, so the last part of tonight's little round robin for the old entry, busting the myths of the Anglo-British nationalist folks saying you'll never get into the EU. So we first of all talked about Spain vetoing us. Rubbish, bollocks, not going to happen. And now we just talked about how we'd be forced to join the euro. We just have to commit to joining it, but we can indefinitely delay that, which is pretty cool as well. Now the last one, the final fold in this, is what the Anglo-Britnats assaults on Scotland's potential to join the EU is the most fun one ever. And that is that Scotland has a deficit too great in which to gain entry into the EU. First, let me point out clearly that Scotland's deficit is imposed through GERS and may not even exist after we become independent in its present form, at least. And second, and most importantly, the 3% of GDP deficit criteria is completely misunderstood by those that just love to quote it. The following video I made from the narrative from a fact-checking organisation called Ferret. Now, Ferret is one of these, they're quite a bit controversial and they're a bit pro-union, the people that run it. So I thought it was quite interesting that the source of my information tonight comes from a kind of pro-union source. Now, I've made this video for you guys to share as well, and it will be available after midnight tonight on YouTube. I am playing it for the first time publicly right now. It's about 6 minutes long, and it's even got a bit of music in it, you know. And I know the music it's got a mild copyright thing on it because I checked it through YouTube stuff, and they said, this is a copyright issue, but the owner doesn't mind you using it. So I'll end up getting adverts on it that I won't make any money from, but I don't mind that, okay? But it's just got a bit of dramatic music as I do the voiceover, all right? So this is basically a video talking about the 3% of GDP deficit criteria and how Scotland doesn't really need to fall into that whole category of that thing. I've lost my button. Here it is. There we go. So professional. Here we are. Currently at almost 8%, the SNP must outline how Scotland could join the European Union as an independent country. This was quoted by Ian Murray, MP. Now, the Ferret Fact Service looked into this claim and found it mostly false. Here's the evidence. The issue of Scotland's deficit has been a major talking point regarding the potential of the country to join the EU after a vote for independence. The deficit is the difference between government day-to-day spending and the revenue it brings in. Ian Murray's claim that Scotland's deficit is at 8% comes from the latest GERS figures. That's the Government Expenditure and Revenue Scotland report. This shows Scotland's estimated deficit at between 7 and 8% of GDP. If a geographical share of revenue from North Sea oil industry is also included. The current deficit figures are based on the constitutional arrangement that is currently in place, and if Scotland were to become an independent nation, it is likely that different economic and political decisions would be made, so GERS figures show us relatively little about what Scotland's long-term financial position would be. However, they do give a credible picture of Scotland's current financial position. But would a deficit as high as 7 or 8% stop Scotland from joining the European Union? The first step for any country wishing to join the EU is to comply with a set of standards broadly set out in the Copenhagen criteria, which covers stable governance, democracy, protection for human rights, a market economy, and the ability to adhere to the EU's political and economic aims. Candidate countries then have to fulfil the requirements in 35 different policy areas or chapters. These are negotiated with the EU, and each chapter is not signed off until the current EU members are satisfied with a candidate country's progress. The country then moves on to its transitional agreement, and once ratified will become a member on an agreed date. For Scotland, the route would be the same, although it is likely that many of the criteria would be fairly and easily fulfilled given that it has been part of a member state since 1973, when it was the European Communities. All new members of the EU are formally required to work towards membership of the euro and to reduce budget deficits to 3% or less as part of the rules set out in the Maastricht convergence criteria. If a member country does not comply with the convergence criteria rules on public deficits, the European Council has the option to enforce policies to reduce the deficit, known as excessive deficit procedure. If the country uses the euro, sanctions may be applied, but every EU country is expected to keep their deficit in line with the 3% rule. A deficit of under 3% is a prerequisite of joining the common currency. However, new members can also negotiate transition periods, allowing them more time to meet the specific EU rules. There are also no formal timescales that countries must work to as part of the convergence process. Therefore, a deficit of 3% of GDP or lower is not an official requirement for entry to the EU. The EU could grant an independent Scotland a transition period that would allow the country to join the EU with an initial budget deficit of more than 3%, then apply pressure to ensure Scotland works towards achieving this. There is precedent for countries with deficits higher than 3% limit being allowed into the EU. Croatia joined in 2013 when their deficit was at 5.3% of GDP. The EU launched EDP measures, and Croatia has subsequently been able to reduce its deficit. Using the current GERS figures, Scotland's estimated deficit of 7 to 8% would have to be reduced to comply with the EU rules, but a deficit larger than 3% would not necessarily prevent an independent Scotland from joining the EU. The Ferret Fact Service verdict on this is mostly false. Ian Murray's claim that any country joining the EU must have a deficit of 3% or below is misleading. While EU rules state that member countries should keep their deficit below that threshold, it is not a specific condition for new candidate countries. It is instead intended as a measure to ensure members comply with EU budgetary discipline. Official estimates show that the difference in spending and revenues for Scotland, or notional deficit, is 7% of GDP, not 8%. This is very interesting, as it kind of takes that whole aspect that unionists love to say, that you will never get into the EU because you have to have a deficit of less than 3%, and completely torpedoes it. This is done by the Ferret Fact Service, and you will find the link for this particular report on the blurb on the actual YouTube channel where I've posted this, The Saltire. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and good luck. Okie dokie. Lots of technical stuff there, but basically, I could put it down to two sentences. It's absolutely bollocks that we have to have a 3% deficit or less to join the EU. It's kind of like, hey, we prefer that, but we're going to help you reduce your deficit because we're a mighty big trading bloc, and we can help you do that. So anytime you hear somebody turn around and say, you're not going to get into the EU anyway, because Spain's going to veto you. You're not going to get into the EU unless you are definitely going to take the euro. And you're certainly not going to get into the EU because, you know what, your deficit is so nonsense. You know, it's unbelievable. I find that whole thing, whole misinformation thing from just people in the street, quite disturbing. And this is friends of mine that are Scottish as well, that are pro-union. Yeah, the deficit's this, the deficit's that. Why are you proud of that? Why are you actually proud that, you know, you've got something that's so garbage to try and belittle your own country to better itself? Oh man, it does my head in big time. Big old time. Okay, so that was where we wrapped up for everything. The whole conclusion thing is that don't believe what the Anglo-British nationalist folk tell you. Don't fall for it. Go and, if you're not too sure about how to reply or answer, or if you're getting into a debate with them and things like that, you know, first of all, I would say don't waste your energy. Go and find some undecided people. They're far better to talk to. Send them to some of the videos on the Saltire YouTube. Some good ones there. I've got a whole new playlist called Commentary, which that video's in, and also the one I made previously, which I cannot remember for the love of me what it is. Let me just go and quickly looky-loo. Hold on. YouTube. My channel. And playlists. I'm going to actually put the playlist in here. There we go. Commentary. Brilliant. No, we don't want to play it. Switch that off. Just want to look at it. Oh, it's so pretty. View Fuel playlist. Okay, so the playlist is actually called Commentary, And the first video in it, apart from the ones I've got subscribed to the YouTube channel and join our Discord community, the first main one is Scotland did not run a deficit between 1980 and 2014. And it talks about various different ways in which you can turn around, well, Scotland could negotiate away the debt that we might be forced to take. We won't really be forced, but you never know. That there is the playlist link in the chat for you guys. I've got about 6 other videos I'm doing voiceovers for in the commentary series, which kind of like reminds people of how crappy the union actually is, and also basically busts those myths that the British Anglo-British nationalists like to talk about as well. Cool. Right, let's get rid of that screen there. Excellent. And then we will bring back the chat window and my naughty notes as well. Okay, thank you, Morgan. That's very nice of you to say that. I need to narrate audiobooks. Once upon a time, there was a Scotsman called Mo. There we go. That's a good start to a story. Quiet night in the chat tonight. Is it because it's getting near to Christmas? Is it because my lives are so late at night? Probably is. It's also a quick one tonight as well. We are going to have a quick look at the papers in a second, but we can't go...
If Scotland leaves the UK, we lose roughly a third of the landmass of Great Britain, probably around half of our territorial waters. We lose the magnificent resource that is Scottish fishing waters. We lose the opportunities from North Sea oil and gas. We lose the potential for renewable energy from Scotland's coasts and in the North Sea and the Atlantic. We lose access to barrier-free trade for Scotch whisky and Scotch salmon, all these fantastic exports, the opportunity to study at some of the world's greatest universities in Scotland, and the joy of having Scots as part of the British nation. Why would you want to throw that away?
Murdo Fraser, come on down and make a complete arse of yourself again, mate. Honestly, that video there has had so many views on Twitter, and I swear to God, it's one of the best tools. Again, that if you combine that with Robert's video and a couple of commentary ones for anybody at all that wants to start understanding a little bit more about Scottish independence, the murder one's great because not many people realise that that's what the Union would lose. They always think, what's Scotland going to lose? Scotland's going to gain. You know, this is the thing. We're going to gain so much by becoming independent, being able to make our own decisions. I mean, it might be scary. It really is. But it might be looking into the future. We're looking into the unknown. But you know something? I think it's better than what we're going to know that we're going to leave behind. That to me is like a big old deal. It really, really is. Okay, let us have a quick look. I have the papers set up. The reason I want to have a quick look at the papers, here we go, 1 second, that is not nice, and there we are, bra. Okie dokie, right. The reason I want to look at the papers just now is that it's all demonising paramedics and nurses just now. Absolutely demonising them. And I want to highlight this as the right-wing press doing their job for the government. And, you know, Rishi Sunak's digging his heels in down south big time and not negotiating, or basically, you know, scuppering all the negotiations. So the Times got it. You know, it's all about, this time it's about all wrapping yourself in cotton wool. Don't take risks this weekend. You know, don't go out and get drunk now. Don't go and do anything silly. Just be good little children. Just stay indoors and, you know, perhaps maybe just be careful there too. Don't go slipping on your freshly polished laminate flooring. You know, I mean, the sun's the same. Don't use your car. Don't go running. Don't play sport. Don't get drunk. Don't have fun. No. Oh, there's Diana. Sick Netflix Diana coffin scene. I don't know why it would be sick. I don't know. She was a beautiful woman, wasn't she? Princess Diana. Stunning. Stunning. When I look at her, and I look at Charles, then I look at Harry and I go, nah. Not a chance. Okay, the I is the same as well. NHS strikes safety at risk as A&E units declare crisis. The Daily Fail is how will they live with themselves if people die today? I hate to tell the Daily Fail this, but people will die naturally regardless of this being. I know that, you know, people are turning around and perhaps feeling that they shouldn't be on strike. I get that. You know, I'm a great believer in the NHS doing a positive job. But this is, they're taking the utter piss out of them. They turn around and say it's an independent panel that decided what the pay rises should be, but they're given the amount by the government. So how on earth can they actually be independent? It's beginning to trigger me. This I'm very pro union, not union as in the Union of the United Kingdom, but I'm a member of a union, and I believe that collective will always do their best to help me. Daily Express is royal fail as Christmas post-disaster. That's really funny how, you know, they've got a picture of the king and his wife there, and then the headline underneath it is royal fail, and it's got nothing to do with the king one there, but you can see why people might look at that and look at the king and go, what's the king failed on? So the Express probe shows 6 in 10 letters not being delivered in almost 2 weeks. Again, that's probably to do with a backlog and industrial action too. You know, it's crazy. Metro is you better watch out. Don't get hurt or ill, and the army are being drawn into everything. The Mirror is as nurses and 999 crews fight to earn enough to pay their bills. The PPE scandal peer Michelle Mone is on a luxury break at a £6,000 hotel in the Alps. Sickening. Financial Times is enough on the headlines there, talking about that Enough is Enough campaign, all done by people that are protesting against the Tories and their government regarding the cost of living and the hypocrisy that they actually are. And then the Star, which is really cool. I love the Star's headlines. They're kind of like what the Sun was in the 80s for me. Wrap yourself in cotton wool. Health Minister suggests don't do anything risky. What the fuck is risky? Sorry, but condescending. I think people will actually now will get up in the morning tomorrow and tie their shoelaces together just to be risky, just to live life on the edge a little bit. Hey, what about walking backwards along the wrong side of the street? How about that? You know, people aren't stupid, you condescending piece of crap. Honestly, don't do anything risky. Getting up in the morning is risky these days. Looking at your bank account is risky these days. You know, drinking hot chocolate that's too hot is risky these days. My God. In the Telegraph, unions have made conscious choice to inflict harm on patients. Right, so listen, let me just come back to the chat just now, okay? I can understand why people will have concerns about these strikes. I really, really do. Okay. But when you look at the press, it's just demonizing the living daylights out of the people that we were clapping for and relying on and admiring just a year ago. You know, it's incredible how the tides turned. And if this doesn't wake up our brothers and sisters down south as well to the hypocrisy of Westminster, because I believe wholeheartedly that Labour would be doing this as well, all right? And I'm not saying that the Scottish Government are perfect. They are so not perfect, all right? But at least they engaged. At least they've tried. And at least that, the nurses up here have got something out of it, and they're going in a direction which they're happy with and agreeing with. It genuinely does my head in. I don't think there's any more papers. Oh yes, there's the Guardian. Hold on a wee second. Let me bring the papers screen back up. Guardian. NHS bosses urge PM to intervene to avoid war of attrition on strikes. Guardian is the only newspaper, apart from that one about Royal Mail, okay, that has a sensible headline. I'm not the world's greatest Guardian fan, but when you look at this, NHS bosses urged PM to intervene to avoid war of attrition on strikes. Sensible. You just have to have a bit of a dialogue, Rishi. Listen, I'm quite happy as well to be an intermediary between you and the nurses, mate. Come here, Mr. Sunak, if you are watching this, which I very much doubt you will. Come on, we'll have a chat, all right? That would be amazing. In fact, anybody at all that's involved in any of this, come and have a chat. We'll record it. You can edit it. We can make you look cool. And then I'll release the raw footage on YouTube later, okay? Right, let's have a quick look at the old chatteroony before we wrap up for the nighty-whitey. There we go. I can see it in big writing now. Oh, Robert. Hiya. How are you, brother? Robert is the Robert from this jingle.
My name's Robert, and I have a question for you. Are you yes yet?
Yes, indeedy do. Robert is the Robert from that jingle, and he is the man that was a no voter in 2014 and is now a yes voter. We spammed the crap out of that earlier on, but now that he's in here, I'd like to spam it again. Okay, and please, 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 if you're new to watching this, you're watching it back at any time at all, go and have a look down my videos. I'm going to change it into a commentary one as well and stick that in. I think it's really important that you take that video and share it and give it to people that may be swithering on deciding to vote yes or not. I keep saying this over and over again. It is an emotional thing. Yes, it is you, Robert. That's true. I like that. It is an emotional thing going from no to yes. And if you listen to Robert's story, the interview that I did with him, I can't emphasize that enough. And I will continue to spam it because it's one of the best tools for showing people that it's okay to vote yes. That's a good slogan. It's okay to vote yes. I'm going to sit there and make something out of that tonight. That's so cool. It's okay to vote yes. Just ask Robert. I like that. A tartan man. Let's see, so nice to hear a yes campaigner who has no bitterness and genuinely wants the best for Scotland. This is coming from someone who voted no in 2014. Keep up the good work. So, tartan man, you can call me Mo. If you're still on just now, would you vote yes just now? Because if you were a no voter in 2014 and you're a yes voter now, even if you're a no voter now, you've always been very respectful to me in my lives here. So you're always welcome here. All right, without a doubt. So don't ever think that anybody's going to be deliberately rude to you or anything like that. And if they are, I apologise in advance. Some people get a bit heated in things, but you're right. I've been pro-independent since I was 12, and I'm now closer to being 100 than I am being 50. Crazy. But no, if you're a no voter and now believe in yes, I'd love to sit down and talk to you, love to record a podcasty type thing. And even if you didn't want to do that, even if you wanted to write your feelings down and in a short essay, I would quite happily narrate it as well. I've got somebody doing that for me just now too, and that's a great way of doing it. It's your own words, it would be unedited, and I would happily narrate it and record it. I would put down your credit and everything. But long story is, that's such a nice thing to say. Favouring Indy but have some concerns, absolutely sick of Westminster. Well, listen, Tartan Man, I hope that through this sort of like the period that we've got until we get a ballot box event, that perhaps maybe we can alleviate some of those concerns. I have concerns as well. I believe that there's so many unanswered questions. Things like pensions, no, pensions will always be protected. Currency, we want to move into our own currency. Taxation, well, we've already got a progressive taxation system up here. There's a lot of things though that people don't feel that we've answered enough. Like, they want numbers. I personally also want numbers. I would like to actually see the bottom line of what we actually generate as a revenue in Scotland and what we actually send down to the Treasury. Not what's in GERS, but all the hidden things that may not be included in these things. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe that there's probably some elements of the generation of funding in Scotland, what we actually create. I mean, our economy is worth $205 billion, which right now is about £160 billion. That's not what we send down to the Treasury, but that's kind of what we turn over. And there's countries about the same size as us that generate less than that, and they're perfectly adequate of looking after themselves. So I think to myself, if we were making our own decisions up here for, to benefit Scotland, and we were pushing forward with a proper trade organisation, working with our closest neighbours, which is the rest of the UK and the EU, then why couldn't we make a success of it? Interesting. Not looking for everything to be perfect with Indy, just want my kids to have a choice and say on their future. Yeah, I'm the same. My son's 16, so if we had a referendum tomorrow, he would be voting in it. He was a young lad in 2014, and he saw his father broken after that referendum. I was a hardcore campaigner, digital warrior online in many a Facebook chat room and other places online, and I got invited to go along to the count party at Dynamic Earth on the night of the actual referendum. And you know what? It was an amazing experience. You've got like about 600-700 of the hardest working indie warriors in one room, becoming more deflated and more deflated. And then Dundee was announced. Bang! We were all lifted. It was incredible. But I didn't do politics at all for 2 years. I didn't do anything until the Brexit thing came along. And I thought, that's going to be easy. Nobody's going to leave the EU. Nobody's going to want to do that. And then, well, it happened. It was awful. Awful. Even though I voted no, I was out demonstrating on Buchanan Street about the impact Westminster has on our kids' democracy and the right to choose. You're absolutely right. And this is the thing, all right? Because we have an unwritten constitution and because we still remain an island of laws, we have to kind of like adhere to those laws, even though they're stupid sometimes. I mean, this is what gets me. Let's just talk about the whole context that I set at the start of each show, which is, do you know something? We don't live in a union of equals. That has clearly been demonstrated by the Supreme Court's judgment. We cannot turn round and disagree with that because they were doing their job. Their job was done properly. Okay, they could not go against the letter of the law. They couldn't interpret it any other way. It was the right thing to do. And it did turn round and demonstrate clearly that we're not a union of equals in law. And why can't we have this democratic route to making up our own mind? Back in 2011, when the SNP won a majority against all odds with the, excuse me, the additional member system, which is a system used to vote in our MSPs up here. When that happened, David Cameron was like, yeah, okay. Was it David Cameron? Whoever basically said that we could have the transfer of power through a Section 30, it happened, okay? But we had less of a democratic mandate in the polls compared to the democratic mandate in Parliament. So you take that cast iron mandate from 2011 and transfer that across into the Section 30. We now have won pretty much every single election going through till then. Okay, with the SNP. Little caveat for the SNP. I know they're not perfect. I know I carry their card, but I am no zealot, and my vote is up for grabs in an independent Scotland. They're just a conduit to what I want. All right? So, we've won every election since then, or pro-Indy's won every election since then. We have a stronger mandate now because more people are wanting it in the polls, and the fact that there's that chunk of the ballot box events which show people want change by voting for an independence party. Why does Westminster refuse to allow the transfer of power? It's the easiest thing in the world. All they have to do is sign it. You know, but it's kind of scary for them, I think. I think they're afraid that they would lose the revenue that we generate up here, that it might even force the rest of the UK out of the G7. It might make them more of a second-rate player on the world stage. I mean, right now we're not doing very good, are we? And I'm saying we because we're still part of it, you know, and it's a shame. Britain was great at one time. You know, we might disagree with the way the empire was created. It's part of our history, and we were a world player, and we were a great partner with the Allies in Second World War, and blah-de-blah historical nostalgia nonsense. Okay, and I like that historical nostalgic nonsense, but you can't base your future on that. Not when the decisions are being made by old men in old suits and dusty boots in a dilapidated place called Westminster that is a relic of democracy now. I mean, they don't even have electronic voting there, you know, for their divisions. They still have to get up off their backsides and walk through doors. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And yeah, you know, I've just ranted on there, Tartan Man, and you have just basically hit the nail on the head. Westminster refuses because they have so much to lose. You're so right. You're welcome to come into the Discord and have a chat with me anytime you want, my friend. Just send me a wee message saying who you are. Go and download Discord. Send me your Discord name on Instagram or Twitter. We can have a wee one-to-one. Tell me how you feel. I'm never going to be rude to you. Like I say, you've always been very respectful here on my live, so I'd be quite happy to speak to you as well. I think the Tories are looking to do it out for years to come in the hope that Nicola Sturgeon retires, steps down, and the Yes campaign numbers possibly fall. I don't think that's going to happen because, if anything, it's going to galvanise even more because we might lose Nicola's leadership. You know, she is a great independence campaigner. It was a great surprise for her to be speaking at the Holyrood rally on the day of the verdict. I was like 6 feet away from her right at the front. I managed to get myself in the press pit right in front of the stage. Don't ask me how I managed that. That's a whole different story. But I was there, and the people that I was with, we were totally surprised. But Nicola had to be there to speak, really, when you think about it, because it was a massive, massive historical event. And she said all the right things. But what do we do now? Two things. I talked about it last night. We could try and hold a snap election by dissolving Holyrood. There's one way that I know they can do that, and that's a vote within Holyrood. You have to have 2/3 plus one of MSPs voting for it. And I think as well, if the First Minister resigns, it can also trigger an election. Don't quote me on that. We'll find out. I'll be going to the conference in Edinburgh in March. Seems like a long way away, but maybe she resigns on the stage there. And a great big thing that's going on. The tears. Wow, people will be so emotional if that happens. But then she's freed up to fight for it. It'd be a big gamble though, wouldn't it? Massive gamble. Anyway, excuse me. We're going to call it a night. Oh, my voice has just gone. Hold on. We are going to call it a night. And I'm going to jump onto Discord for about 10 minutes because I am working at 7 a.m. tomorrow. If anybody here wants to join Discord, especially yourself, Tartan Man, it's quite raw, the discussions that we have there. It's not always about independence either, which is quite good. You're more than welcome to come and join. Just go and download Discord. In fact, you know what? Let's just play that again. The Saltire has a growing Discord community. It is the perfect place to rub shoulders with other indie folk like yourself. If you want to be part of this community, send Mo a DM on his Twitter account at the Saltire IG. I think I need to update that because you can also do it on my Instagram, which is just at the Saltire. Well, it's just the Saltire on Instagram. So yeah, send me a wee message if you want to come and join Tartan Man. Make sure that you have a Discord account and send me the name so I can watch for you coming through on the welcome screens so I know who you are. There's somebody that's actually sitting there still on the welcome screens just now who I don't know who it is. Won't get past there. It's kind of a security wall till I know who they are. Okay, very cool. Right, lovely chat always. Very good. No sweat, my friend. I will speak to you all later. It's been a nice evening tonight. A nice little chat at the end there with yourself, Tartan Man, and everybody else. And I've got to say thank you for listening. And there's no live on a Wednesday. I always have a Wednesday off. My children come back from their mums on a Wednesday, but there will be one on Thursday at 11 o'clock. That gives me an opportunity to prepare for it then. And then there'll be one on Friday, and then it's Christmas Eve. Oh my. Christmas Eve. Crazy. You meant to say Mo instead of no. Very cool. Right, listen. Thanks again, guys. And I will see you in Discord if you're coming across the Discord. Take it easy, and thanks for watching tonight.